Um, Hello everyone. On behalf of Indian National Trust for Art and Culture Heritage INTAC and the INTAC Conservation Institutes, I extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished speaker, Bessie Cecil, and everyone who has joined us for today's talk in the Conservation Insights 2020 lecture series. I'm Dr. Padma Rohila, Director, ICI Delhi. Now to introduce our speaker, Bessie Cecil is an alumnus of College of Arts and Crafts, Chennai, and has obtained her PhD in textile design and textile conservation from the University of Madras in 2010. She has gained knowledge through various research fellowships, namely visiting fellow at Victoria and Albert Museum in London on Nehru Fellowship in 2006, Fulbright Doctoral and Professional Fellow at the Florida State University, USA from 2006-7. She was Research Associate in 2007 and 8 at the Craft Education and Research Center, Kalakshetra Foundation, Chennai, where she was researching on natural dyes and creating design. As Research Fellow at Ancient Civilizations Museum, Singapore, researching on hand-painted techniques and dye analysis of the trade textiles from Coromandel Coast to Southern Asia during 2010-11. She has also curated the exhibition Batik Sutra, Tagore Travel and Textiles, organized by Sutra Textile Studies in Kolkata in 2011, and Colors of Nature, organized again by Sutra Textile Studies and Botanical Survey of India in Kolkata in 2014. Well, our association with INTAC, she goes back to her workshops that she's conducted. She also gave a talk in the same series, and she was also awarded the Research Fellow INTAC in 2015-16 and a Charles Wallace Fellow to UK in 2015. She is presently working as consultant handlooms at the Crafts Education Research Center, Kalakshetra Foundation, Chennai, and researching on a book, Weaving India, for focusing on hand-woven textile traditions. And that is the title for today's talk also, Weaving India. In the early 20th century, a commencement was made in the museum report of the textile department of the Bradford Technical College, with a section on the standardizing of trade terms, yarn, weaves, and fabrics, that are the widely referred terms in use today, and focus on the Western world weave practices on automated looms. Despite the fact that India holds varied varieties woven on handloom, there are no standardized terms in practice. So this presentation is a research journey of understanding the varied hand-woven traditions and their weaves. Before I invite Bessie Cecil for our presentation, I request all of you to kindly put your microphones on mute. The questions will be taken right at the end of the presentations. So please keep typing them in the chat facility at the bottom, and I'll be monitoring those and will be taking them up at the end of the talk. And also please type in your name, email ID, and name of the organization. We'd like to know who all has joined us today. So Bessie, over to you.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. And here I am again. I have the starting trouble, so bear with me. The journey started when I was there at the Asian Civilizations Museum. When we were working on they were actually working for an upcoming exhibition where I went in an expert to understand the colors and the techniques, and that was the time they had purchased that collection, and part of the collection was from Gujarat as well. And when we were viewing Gujarat collection as well as the Coromandel collection, there was one textile that came across Patola. You see here in Patola, this part of it here, there is some loose threads. So seeing that, immediately, we were a group of people from across the globe, curators and conservators and researchers, and so we were there, and immediately they said, the curator in charge, meaning conservationist in charge, said, we have some kind of damage. And apparently they were from Japan and China and one Chinese Singapore. And I said, no, that's not damage, that we do it intentionally. So before we go to the next, or it's a kind of a demarcation, we cut it, we leave it loose, this part, we leave it loose intentionally. So the next part of it starts. Actually, I was trying to explain, and immediately what they did was, they made a note of it. Actually, they had mentioned it was some kind of a damage, and they were trying to, they rectified, they corrected it. And, it ended there. But coming back to India after my research was all over, I was kind of, whenever you do something, you've been active into something, and after some time, you have a lot of time, and you feel very depressed. At one such point, the thought came, I was actually going through all the experience, and the thought came that that particular incident came. I was wondering, how much do I know about handloom? And if I do not know about handloom, how much we can expect other people from other country to know about handloom? So why not do a study on it? So I was, whenever I get time, or whenever I was, it's not about the time, it was about when you're in the mood. I was trying to understand, I was trying to read. For me, I have a problem. Reading doesn't really help me. I have to go to the place, see, understand, touch, be there to understand. I have this disability. So it's a blessing in disguise, I would say. So, really the books didn't really help me. But yes, it gave an idea, it gave a head start. So then, this was playing there in my mind for almost 4 years, but I was slowly working on it. Then, yes, ETAC happened. They called me for a workshop. I did the presentation. At that time, Mr. L.K. Gupta, who was the chairman, who said, Bessie, we are coming up with a research project, probably you should apply. So I was the first one to apply, and I got it. And that was about understanding the weaving or the, techniques. See, for example, we say Banaras tradition, or, you say it's a Banaras sari, you say it is a Titan sari, you say it is a Kanjivaram sari. So what is the weaving technique? The whole question comes into it. So I told probably, I should focus on that. I applied and I got the fellowship. My journey began there. So that was the genesis of this Weaving India. And the first thing is I went to Balaramapuram, which is in Kerala. It's a border state in between Tamil Nadu and Kerala. A place called Balaramapuram, where the popular Kerala sari, that's what everybody says, Kerala sari is woven. That is the place I went. And I'm not going to go through the slides, because I have a problem here. It was too much of a confusion for me to prepare the slide, and I have a coordination problem also. So this particular presentation, I will do the presentation, and then I have selected few slides and I'll run through it. So kindly bear with me. So it's going to be more of a narrative, or narrative of my journey making Weaving India. And so I went to Balaramapuram, and here there is a branch of Indian Institute of Handloom Technology, where they have few looms, around 50 looms in-house, and the weaving was happening in few looms. So the person in charge was taking me around, and there was one loom where they were weaving in a particular way, which was very, which for me, it caught my attention. So I immediately asked, why is he weaving that, the way he is weaving? And immediately he said, that is how the Bhavani carpets are woven. Here again, you have the name of the place, but you do not know what is the technique. So that is how I'll come back to it. When talking about the, weaving techniques, I'll come back to it, but just listen to this, flow of narration. Bhavani carpets, that is the popular word Jamakalam, is woven. So the next thing was, I went to, from Kerala, from Balaramapuram, I went to Erode. Erode is a place where the Kaveri runs. By the bank, this small place called Bhavani is situated, and this carpet is woven. And that really was a revelation for me, or enlightenment, because the loom, what I saw in Balaramapuram and what I was seeing there was something, it had the basics, but one was the finest, there's nothing called finest, where they were weaving the finest, textile. So to talk about the loom, this is one loom from Vijayawada, where it's a pit loom, where the weaver has this leg inside. I'll just briefly explain what it is. And there are, there are set parts of the loom. If we say the word hand loom, there are, this is the schema, and this is, sorry, I lost my drawing, and this is something which I pulled out from some reference, so kindly bear with me. You will see the warp beam, lease rods, heeled, reed, treadles, and cloth roller. Apart from that, you will have the sleigh and the shuttle and the temple. Don't try to understand that right away, people who are not in the field of textile. But this is the basic structure of a loom. I came to understand, for my initial idea when I started this journey was only about the textile. It was never about the loom. But when I went to Balaramapuram and then I went to Bhavani, the two in this incident made me think, this is something I have to look into. One was one was kind of the finest fabric. One was the crudest, meaning the coarsest fabric was woven. But the basic structure of the loom was same. But the use of the shuttle is something which carries the yarn across. And when I was there in Bhavani, there were two people sitting, and they were weaving, and there was a bottle that was actually hanging. It comes in this later slide. I'll show you photograph. And what they were doing was, on and off, they were actually oiling the shuttle. So the next question was, when I see the shuttle, what I saw from the other place was a small cane shuttle. Here I see a huge 10-inch shuttle. And the next question, what material it is made of. So they were telling it's made of tamarind wood. And I asked, why tamarind wood? Why not teak? Why not any other wood? They said, no, this often falls and it doesn't break. It stands well and it's sturdy. It is light in weight, so we use it. Where are the documentation of all this? Why this is not why I couldn't read this anywhere? Then the making of the reed, a particular part of the loom. So every part of the loom was, it actually had something to convey. So eventually, I didn't have an idea what I was looking, because I'm not a technical person. And but I was trying to, at least I started my journey of understanding what, not only the textile, but the making, the machine or the maker, everything, I was trying to understand. When this was happening, somebody from, a person who was trying to put an exhibition on Indian textiles, they approached me, Bessie, we have a lot of information on textiles that are woven, on weaving tradition of, meaning we have information on East, West, and North, but we do not have on South Indian textile or the tradition. Can you help us? I said, I don't know how much I can help, but let me try. And, and they were saying, they were very particular about, they put a word, say, the word they mentioned, it has to be more than 100 years. That was, there's nothing called more than 100 years. Then I said, okay, let me try. Except for what I mean, for me, that at that point of time, it was a handful of tradition across the country, meaning the Kodali Karupur, the Paitani, and a few other textiles like the Jamdanis, or, those had a name, and I can say, what do you say? It has a tradition. But today you have the name Chettinad, and if you say if it was 100 years old, I can't say, I didn't have an answer. So they was very particular, it has to be 100 years. So randomly I get told, probably these should be 100 years, but let me get back to you. And I came across a very interesting information at that point of time, and I was a few information, and we had a discussion, and I presented my findings. So the talk, the question was, how old is Kanjivaram tradition? I said, Kanjivaram, what we know today, the silk, is not more than 150 or 120 years. It's recent. That's exactly it. The next question was, why is it in the Kanjivaram tradition, the earliest ones we see, there is no use of zari. Zari is something, the metal thread that is used in weaving, which is there in every tradition across our country today. So I said, the question, why no zari, and why suddenly there is zari? the next thing that came to my mind was, you know what? Probably that is the time we had the zari being imported from France, Lyon. Prior to that, what happened? What was the story of zari? You know, the material has to be understood. There are multiple things. So I'm trying to really, really present in a simple way, and bear with me if I'm confusing. So at that point of time, it is the pre-industrial era and the industrial era. So when it comes to the zari, at one point of time, it was handmade, and it was handmade throughout a country. It was not just confined to today's Surat or Tamil Nadu Zari Board or part of Varanasi. It was made everywhere. And the only available information on that are the reports that were prepared, saying monograph on tinsel and wire making of Madras Presidency, Bombay Presidency, United Province, and Central, Central Provenance. This is the report. These are the 4 reports that I came across, and I came across one report, but eventually I got hold of everything. And very clearly, the zari making industry was explained in that. And those were manually made. Manually made, it's a laborious process. I'm not going to go into the process, but each and every yarn, every filament was drawn, and it was beaten, and then it was wound around a silk yarn. So thinking of it, doing it manually, it is unbelievable. And these are time consuming, they are very expensive. And suddenly you see one day the market is flooded with zari, where everybody can buy, every weaver had an access, and it was affordable. And so new traditions were born. Until then, at least the certain use of zari was confined to certain traditions only, like the Paitani or the Kodali Karpur, or we can name a few more. But so I said, this is when the Kanchipuram started using the zari. So the tradition what we have today was probably born then. This was just a discussion. Now I have to prove it. So my journey started. I was not wrong. The truth is, number of tradition. Until then, we go to the Watson volume. I like it. Last time I said it is available online. If you the Textile Manufacturers of India, if you look into the title, it says men's garment, women's garment. It says it's made in Madras or Andhra or whatever, Bombay. It says the place, but there is nowhere it mentions the weaving technique or a tradition name like Benares textile or Kanjipuram textile. It doesn't talk about all that. It is just a women's garment and men's garment, so on and so forth. So what happened when the weaving was already happening, when the zari came, when there was a material evolution that happened, newer traditions were born, and the requirements changed with post-independence or just before the independence. There is a standard way of wearing sari, like what we are wearing today. Prior to that, even today, we see much of the community style of wearing sari. That was also slowly being replaced, and newer traditions were born. And wow, what was the name? They took the name of the place where it was woven. So majority of the textiles today, what we have, has taken the name of the places where it is woven. So what happened? What my understanding was, how am I going to keep? And I have to present a report for the INTAC also. By then, the 1 year was over, and I had to present. I did a presentation which I was not very happy, but I put together all information what I got. It was a bit confusing. I didn't know how to categorize according to region or according to weaves or according to material or what. It was a total confusion. Anyway, I had submitted the report. It had some information, but I don't think so. Indian handloom could be complete in this era unless a particular group, this number of people, get into it and start documenting or researching and doing the work. So anyway, the whole idea is, if you compare the Watson volume, and if you compare the today's tradition, you can relate few textiles. For example, in South India, the Chettinad tradition is very, very popular, but you don't see any such thing in the Watson volume. Likewise, the Kanjivaram tradition is so much spoken. It is known, one of the richest tradition. But if you see in Watson volume, it is not there. So all that apart, keeping that as by the side, or they were the reference material. My journey started from Bhavani. I packed my bags, and it was through the west. I went to the north, to the east, and to the coastal side, and I came. And the journey was packed with so much of information, which I couldn't document on my own because it was very, what do you say, it was too much for me as an individual to take it up and do it. And but the whole idea, I decided the book has to, the documentation, whatever I'm doing right now, will have the swatches. Because the Watson volume had the swatches, I was able to touch it and see it and feel it, and today talk what they are. So today the digital technology is so advanced. Photographs is very good, which is needed, that gives you a very good idea. But Indian handloom is all about texture. It is all about the visual appeal. It is so beautiful. It has to be enjoyed. I thought, why not incorporate the swatches? So what I submitted in INTAC also, I had incorporated the swatches. But coming back, this project happened in the year 2014-15. That was just the beginning, but started working on it. And finally, after this extensive, traveling and everything, I categorized my study according to the weaves. So this is when something very interesting happened. Again, the literature survey of weaving. How many books do we have on handlooms? How many, do we have given introduction of what is handloom? What are the type of handlooms that are available? What is the material? What is, what is the textile that is woven out of it? So all that basic introduction is very important. And there is one document which I came across, which was written in 1940 by one Mr. Nair. It was just a small booklet. And there you will find the schematic diagram of various traditions, and he also had classified under certain heads, and he had given. But other than that, I was not able to find information like jala making or adai making. I went to Indian Institute of Handloom Technology, Salem, Indian Institute of Handloom Technology, Varanasi, and that really didn't help. But talking to each and everybody, I was able to understand we can only, put under the textile have to be drawn, the tradition have to be brought under certain categories. So I initially started with the weaves. And under the weaves, what are the tradition that fits in? And again, say plain weave is something everybody knows, one up and one down. I'm sorry to be talking technically in this, and I don't know if I should be doing, but if you have any doubts, please do get back to me. In most of us, whatever we are wearing right now, it is all one up, one down, the plain weave. But in handloom, there is, when you say the plain weave, Balaramapuram sari is plain weave. Bhavani Jamakalam is plain weave. The Kota sari is plain weave. The Chanderi is plain weave. The Kanjivaram is the ground weave is plain weave. But everything has a different, the Gadwal, or what we have is, or the recent Venkatagiri, whatever you see, the ground weave is plain weave, yet they are so visually different. How they are different? Because of the use of material, the use of the inch per, all those are technical details. And I feel all this has to be, I felt all this has to be documented, but yet I haven't documented everything. I just focused on the weaves, and under that what tradition should come. And I go, and under that I'm going to show few variations, and that will include the loom as well as the textile. I'll just run through the slides. This is something called Gongadi, a craft from Andhra Pradesh, where they are sheep herders. They shear their own sheep and they kind of do spin their own wool and they weave it. This is a simple loom, and the craftsman, what he's doing, he has this white wool, and that is the tradition for them. They call it as kada, and they knot it, and that says the status of the user in their community. This is, it goes beyond textile. That's, it goes beyond the tradition. And here is something which I went to, when I went to Orissa, I went to the place called Nuapatna. And actually, I went to understand how the weft ikat is done. The finest weft ikat comes from one of the places is Nuapatna. So I went there and I was going through, and suddenly this caught my eye. I've always heard my teachers say that there's something called thigh reeling. But I never understood what thigh reeling was until I saw this. This was something amazing. These people go to the forest. It's semi-cultivated, semi-wild forest area where they go cultivate the, they collect the tasasil. They come with, they bring it, they process it. And this is how they have 10 to 12 cocoons together, and they reel it together to bring the one filament. And in Orissa only, this is another process, where the hank winding, these are all pre-spinning process, or no, pre-weavings, pre-loom processes. So what is happening with, just before warping, they have to prepare the yarn for, sizing and warping and sizing. And this is one of the process. And whereas when I go to, of course, that is cotton and this is silk. This was in Gujarat, Ridrol, where I went. They have a different way of doing it. They are the same. The implements are the same. The technique is the same. Yes, yet the material you use is so very different. And here again in Orissa, one another thing was, when they do the weft ikat weaving, they had a kind of stick kind of a thing that they kept adjusting. So I said, what is this, material? They said, the porcupine quill. And this is the beauty, the use of the indigenous material. They said, where do you get it? I was asking, where do you get it from? I said, you walk around, you'll find it everywhere. And they gave me two of those porcupine quill, which I still have it with me. And so they said that is how it's been, that is the way we use it. Whereas you go to Gujarat, they have the same tradition, meaning this is double ikat, but they use a iron rod to adjust everything. So the material variation or the use of material is something very important which has to be done. The other interesting area was when I went to Bardhaman in West Bengal, and I was trying to understand how the jamdani, finest muslin jamdanis are made. And something caught my eyes was one part of the, sorry, I didn't incorporate the, slide. The reed, a part of the loom where it is, it's called reed, R-E-E-D. It's teeth like, like comb it will be, where through which they draw the yarn. And it was the finest reed I have ever seen in my life. And I just couldn't let go, and I was just watching it. And he said, ma'am, this is the, I said, I was asking who makes it, the finest craftsmanship. And either the denting or the gap has to be very even and very meticulously, very, it's amazing. I'm unable to express with words. And he said, this is the last man of the last generation who is there. And if he leaves us, if after him, there is nobody. And this craft is already done. So what happens then? And I had an answer when I went to Varanasi. Varanasi is like 3/4, 90%, 95% is replaced with steel reed. So what happens? The bamboo reed is completely replaced with the steel reed. And there are advantages and disadvantages to it. And one more very interesting information that I came to understand was all the reed makers across the country are Muslims, no matter what. This I came to know in Bardhaman. He said, then everywhere I went, my next question, who makes the reed? He said, Bai. Sambai. This is everywhere, everywhere. That was amazing. It is not said anywhere, but it's so nice to know. So coming to Varanasi, what happens? There's something very interesting I saw here also. The use of the shuttle. Shuttle is something which carries the yarn across the loom. And this was, you could touch. It's like it's like a ceramic piece, But next question, what material is this? They said it's the buffalo horn. And now the use of buffalo horn, for some reason, it's, I don't know, it's not happening, but they say that is the most comfortable material that that can weave the most soffiti or the fine silk, because it slides across the weft just like that. It doesn't cause damage to the yarn. So we prefer this. And so the material study was quite an interesting thing that I came to understand. The next thing is, here you see the arrangement of the warp. This is the warp. I don't know how to say this. This is, where is the cursor? Yeah, this is the warp. So the warp setting, we call it as ball warp. But here there is a loom. Both are loom. Both are the simple basic loom. But the setup is like, it could be hung from anywhere, or it could be having a small structure. It could, the variations. There are variations that it's interesting to know, because we are getting mechanized at a very, very fast pace. And I think, we cannot let go our tradition, or the simplicity. See here, it is the open air. This is the Bhavani carpet which I was telling. This is the how they lay the warp, and this is how the weavers sit. And you see the bottle hanging here. It's not very clear, it's blurred. How two weavers are sitting, and you see the V shape in the loom. You know what? Once they throw the yarn, both the weavers simultaneously, they push the weft yarn to the reed. This is where is this? This is the reed. From here, they push it there to this V shape, and then they pull the slate to beat it. You know what? All the white yarn that you see will be completely covered with the float. This is plain weave. But yet you see the variations here, and I feel, I think Aditi Ranjan in a book had mentioned about Jamakalam. No other book has ever spoken about Jamakalam, or I missed out. But majority of the books talks about the popular traditions across the country, the finest Benares, the Patolas, and the Kanjivarams. All that is there, but the workmanship that goes into this has not been documented anywhere. And here again, you see these are handloom, but you see the variations here. How the warp is, wound on a cloth beam here, whereas here it is something the weaver is sitting opposite, and they are, to do the design. There are two weavers. They need it. Here they are sitting side by side. Here they are sitting opposite side, and that was taken in Hyderabad, where the himru is woven the traditional way, the authentic way, only in Suraya Bose Hassan's workshop or weaver's workshop in Hyderabad. And that is amazing to look at how in unity they work. And the textile that comes out of it is the finest. And here again in Kaitun, in Kota, where I'm sorry the photograph is very blurred. I didn't know how to use the camera when I went. Then here you see the where is the cursor? Okay, here you see the setup of the warp is taken up and it is brought down. And here you see some bundles hanging. The beauty is they use cotton and silk, and they need the even tension. So what they have done for cotton, they have used certain weight, and for silk they have, so the weight varies. So it has a tension. Oh, where is this written? Why? All this was very fascinating for me. And the next slide was this is what I call as the reed. Yeah. And here the reed is so different. You see the use of bamboo as well as stainless steel. So the material variation, and you see how it has been all tied with the thread. And this was again done by a Muslim craftsman. And why there is bamboo here and why the rest is steel? Because they use zari here. if you're going to be using zari, they prefer the bamboo because of the abrasion. If you're going to be, the zari is going to be drawn through the steel or iron reed, it will damage the zari yarn, that is the metal yarn. So they prefer the bamboo reed. So this was something informative for me. Coming to Kanchipuram, I understood they completely do one, even today they do it with bamboo reed only. But whereas in Varanasi, it's a different story. I don't know how the weavers managed to do it. And this is something, again, you know, when I was trying to understand the parts of the loom, and this is something which I should tell, this, the bamboo thing which is there across, which is called temple. Temple is something which holds the textile in place, so that because here the loose, you know, here it is loose. So when the weft is passed across, it needs that stretch for the textile to be woven without any, you know, sluggishness or any warping or any you know, with proper tension. So when the temple also varies. This is in Gujarat. I mean, this is in Orissa, where they had used the local material again. Whereas here in South India, we have the flat wooden plank with nails at the end, which really, you know, holds it in place. It's collapsible. And when I was talking about this temple, you know, I was so excited. And one of my teachers said, "Did you do something about walking temple?" And I said, "Walking temple? Which book talks about?" No book talks about it. But where do I find it? He said, "Go to some place in Gummidi-Pundi. There are a few places here." So I went to a place called Ayampete. It's near Kanchipuram. And there you see the weaver. We may have a question. He is dressed in certain way, and it dressed or not dressed. Okay, he prefers to be that way because the ergonomy of you know, the while weaving, they say this is the most comfortable way to be when they are weaving. So it goes beyond the material, goes beyond what the loom, it goes beyond something, and it is a person and their comfort level. And we're coming to the walking temple. Here the walking temple is, you know, as and when they weave, they remove the first one and they hook it. So it keeps rotating, and hence it is called the walking temple. And yeah, this is something else. And again, coming to the shuttle, I had spoken to you earlier, and this is the simplest cane one, and this is again the buffalo horn. So again, you know what, in a simple sari, and this is another way temple which I was talking. It's a collapsible rod. This is taken in Chanderi, and here to make a design, they use spurn. Some places they use small shuttle and the bigger one. So there are regional variations in that as well. And here you see the paitani, how it is woven with so many spurns and shuttle. And here it is a simple house in Evla. You know, it's not always about the textile. Like I said, it's not always about the textile. It's not about the loom, or it's not about the material. It's about the people, how they live in community, you know, as a community or as a family. A simple house, and I go inside. This is how I've been welcomed. And, you know, the loop is set inside, and they all were giving me information. The best part is I don't speak Hindi and English, and they don't speak English. And the way we communicated throughout the country is what it was the same scenario. And this is what it was, you know, when we finished, they all were so happy and gave us food, and, you know, gave me food, and they send me off. And I have to go back again. And this is, again, it was in, you know, these are the people. And we don't speak a word. They are from Kaitun again, from the society. You know, we became so comfortable. They explained to me everything. And the language, what we need to understand was so simple. The smile, and, you know, we had something in common, the textile, we were able to understand. And finally, they managed to convey something, you know, to me, that yeah, everything is so nice, but there is something which is missing in you. Where they brought in the culture, they said, you know what, you have to have your nose pierced. I said, come, let's go, let's pierce the nose. And they came up with a very big one. Oh, it is not related to the subject, but it's, it is something good. It makes you feel it's full of memories, or it's so nostalgic. And they said, they took me to a person, and they came up with a big rod, like thing. I said, no, I'm not doing it, but when I come next time, I'll make sure that my nose is pierced. And the first thing I did was I got my nose pierced coming here, which I had to go through a lot, but doesn't matter. But it's the culture, it's the people, the beauty of celebrating the culture and the textile and the people. And when all this traditional stuff is happening, I'm not spoken too much about the textile, because I'm there are a lot of books which talks about the tradition and the textile. My book is going to be coming soon, where I have got 60 incorporate selected 60 swatches across the country, and I have incorporated 4 by 6 inches of swatches in the book, and it has come under the what do you say, the weaves. I have tried my level best to put it under the weaves. Definitely there will be shortcoming, there will be corrections in my future edition, but this is the first initial step I have taken. So what are the things that I have focused on? All the major popular traditions that you all know, what you have read, the living tradition, I have incorporated. Apart from that, these are the newer traditions that are coming into play. Where they weave the sequence into it, and this is done majorly in Calcutta. Many of you all should be knowing, or but yet this is such a beauty and innovation in handloom with the craftspeople. They are doing how they come up with the idea of making a small pocket and inserting a sequin in it, and then weaving it with a different material as well. And I have to yeah, before I go back, I want to say this. What happens, like in my abstract I had given, in the 20th century, uh, the textile department of Bradford Technical College came up with the whole idea of standardizing terms for textile, that is yarn, fabric, of weaves. So initially I mentioned about trying to understand, or trying to get the information, or about understanding the handloom. Unfortunately, we don't have any such book which really talks about handloom and the weaves that are made in the handloom. This book is published in the year 1912. And here I came across this. That was the time that they initiated to standardize the terms. So imagine at that time, the Western world, this was the UK edition, published in UK, and that time the whole study was based on the mechanized loom, and nothing was handloom. But here in India, if you see many of the textile students or any textile college, the first book we refer is this, and this is completely of Western ideas. Where is the book that has to be talking on textile, our textile and our handloom weaving techniques, and presenting it to the larger public? Where is it? There's no documentation, there is no book. Why it is not there? Briefly, there are some books which talks, okay, it is a twill weave, it is this and that, but there is categorically to present, it is not available. And and my search was, I was trying to, if we have a book from a book called The Textile Manufacturers of India from 1867, there has to be a book to go with it, explaining the techniques. My search was there until my eye fell on it. I took a back seat. I said, then from there afterwards there is no book at all. So only I have to find a way to categorize. For example, this. Sorry. Okay, the Paitani. Many of us will immediately. Paitani is not the technique. It's the place where it is woven. And if we say that Paitani is, A similar technique was woven in Chennai and Orissa last time I told in my presentation, and it didn't have a name at that point. And now this technique, this weaving technique. So what is the technique? The popular idea is tapestry weave. Tapestry is not a weave. It is a particular kind of textile. You know, probably it relates to a complete Western term where it could, relate with the weaving technique as well, but not to us. So what do we say? So I try to, at least understand. I don't have a term yet, but I said, okay, let's interlock. Under that category, I have brought in. So somebody or a committee have to be formed to standardize or to form term before it is completely lost from the face of, earth. So that is one thing I sincerely present before the scholars and researchers who are present here. I don't know how clear I was. If people had come, weaving India, yes, I did try to weave many aspects into one. Here again, before I close, I have to say, I have to show this is something, everybody says it's very common. What's the name of the weave? It's called Bedford cord. Bedford cord. It is a very English name. It's a name of the bed. It's a place in UK, in US. It's a place. And what are we doing in handloom? Bedford cord, we are still weaving in handloom. Terry towels, we are still weaving in handloom. And I apparently came to understand the Indian Railways use terry towels that are woven only in handloom. So this Bedford cord, how it is being woven, it's a short one. I mean, it's a 1-minute video. Oh no. So you saw what was happening with his leg. There are so many treadles, and he was going from right to left, then left to right, listening to the music, and they do it. And there was another person, like when I went to the same state, Erode, when I went same district, and there was a weaver who was weaving with 12 treadles. What they operate in the leg is called the treadles. There were 12, and literally he was moving from one end of the loom to the other. And when I went there, actually my visit there was to understand how the double cloth was woven, the particular weave was woven. And they said, no, there's nothing called double cloth. I didn't know the local term, what they used. The double cloth, no, there's no double cloth. And I said, okay, it is there everywhere. Take me to a shop, a society, so let me show you. So when I went there and I told this one, oh, this Panipat variety, what are you talking, madam? This is not double cloth. Why Panipat in Erode? Then they said this particular variety, this particular loom, style of weaving, it was widely practiced in Panipat. And from there, we had come, it was brought here, and it is known as Panipat variety. Whereas in Panipat, they don't weave it anymore. I went around every society in Panipat, they don't weave it. Everything has been mechanized. And here, okay, this is going to take you for a 360-degree turn because I couldn't trim the video. This is Patan Patola, a loom which is entirely different. This is actually a 2 minutes video. Please, it's worth watching it. I was trying my level best to capture the the loom and the weaving. The 36 seconds is going to be very confusing. After that, it will come to a form. See here, they are using the the iron what do you say, pin kind of a thing. Oh no. How do I turn it? Oh, I'm very sorry. I don't know
No,
how
no,
to.
Bessie, it's okay. One can understand the perspective, I'm sure. It's okay. Go on.
Not the normal shuttle. Here it's like a test tube, how we use it in the laboratory. And the yarn comes through that. And see, and the beauty is, it hangs like a giant spider, and it's tied from corners of the ceiling, and it doesn't have a structure at all. And the loom is in an angle. And these are Salvi brothers, the famous Salvi brothers. And they say the patolas, what they weave, even if you pour water, it doesn't, seep to the side just like that. It holds for a while before it lets through. Lets through. Yeah, with this, I think I'll conclude. I never thought I'll take an hour, but with this, I'll conclude. And yeah, and thank you. And I'm happy again to answer. And I didn't mean to confuse. I didn't mean to jump from one place to other, but I wanted to give some idea of what Indian handloom, or the weaving scenario.
One more, then I will. Okay.
Hello, Bessie. Good evening. I'm Padma Priya here from Bangalore.
Yeah, hello, Padma.
How are you? That's
Yeah,
a wonderful lecture. I have also been thinking about this Bhavani Jamkalam because I come from that place. And whenever I see any textile book, as you were so interested in our own textiles and weaving techniques, I was interested in my own community weaving centers. So I think I was so happy to hear from you about this Bhavani Jamkalam. And it is so much related to that Kerala weaving tradition as well. So it's very, very interesting. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. I'll just conclude with I'll just conclude my talk. And yeah, there are many such traditions which are not being mentioned, and many traditions which are lost, and many traditions which are misunderstood. Even I'm in the learning process, and at least from my end, I have taken a small initiative to bring it in the format. So at least the period textiles are documented, like the Watson volume. And that's going to be just the beginning, and there is lots to do. And yeah, my book is over. It's there in printing, and I'm really, because of the lockdown, it is there. And the book was edited by Dr. Val Crawford, who's Dr. Val Crawford from America. And she just read it, and she said, I am going to do it. And apparently she's not even a textile person. She's she has a medical background, but her interest in textile was so strong. She said, Bessie, we are working at, and this January she was here, and she said she has so much ideas, and she said it's full of information. And more than, at least, this is not a proper book, and it's not about promoting the book. It's trying to understand. For me, what I can't, earlier I said, I can't read and understand a book. So my whole idea was, I don't want to read 10 pages about one to understand a particular tradition. So why can't I simplify? This has to reach out to people. It should not be confined to a closed group of textile groups. So it has to be reaching larger public. So what the whole idea was, I had given a definition, then I have put the textile, and there is like less than 5 sentences which explains the tradition. That is all. So you take the book, you will have an understanding about what is our material, a basic, an introduction, what is the handloom with proper schematic, what is the functions, parts and functions of the loom, what is the pre-loom process, what is the loom, or what happens in the loom becomes the book. With the map, I go into it, and every textile, a significant feature has been presented. And I don't know, I've tried to do my best. So anybody takes the book, if they sit like 2 to 3 hours, even the slow reader, if they sit for 4 hours, they'll finish the book. There's hardly any text in it, but a lot of information I had tried to, I visualize myself as a reader. So a book like that, I will read it. So that is what it is. And it is just a stepping stone for further research and further understanding. And people who are not interested in further analysis or research, they can just enjoy the texture and feel it and, take it for, do it. Now, unfortunately, it's there held up. I don't know when things will happen again. So with that, and thank you very much. Before, I would like to thank all the craftsperson. I can't name one. There are so many. And in fact, yes, of course, the chairman, Mr. L.K. Gupta and Navin Piplani. And of course, Padma, you come last. Okay, and then Weavers Service Center across the country. They were very helpful for many of the things. We didn't have the text. For example, one particular thing, what we call it as Jamavar. So what is Jamavar? Is it the name of the textile or a design or a weave or what? Those are the things which really helped me. Weaver Service Center, Varanasi, they were able to give me. So all the technical thing which I could not find in the book, I had to talk with the people and the crafts people and the people in Weaver Service Center. I got all the technical support that I wanted. Of course, Dakshin Chitra, it's next door for me. So whenever I go there, the library is every day and night, it's open for me. And here, Mrs. Surya Bose Hassan from Hyderabad, a wonderful person where, I think you have to live like that, for the people. It's not for ourselves, but for the people. And Bappa, who's always sharing information from Calcutta. And again, coming to the book, yes, I would like to acknowledge because, with the INTAC has given me in an opening to realize my dream. That is the book. Abstract Creative Studio has helped me to design the book. And Dr. Val Crawford and Mr. Venimalai from NIFT, these people, it is not here, nobody was paid. The point is there. I didn't have funding, I didn't have work. I just went out of, my husband's money. I traveled, and initially, yes, the INTAC supported. Then after, it was my family that supported, and my friends who pitched in, who came in. He said, Bessie, never mind, we'll help. So that was Venimalai, who after his classes, who will come and design. And then Shreya Nagarajan Singh, who used to organize, do help me do the presentations for whenever it happens with Apparao Gallery. And she got her Fulbright fellowship. She came back and we happened to meet. And I was talking about the book, Bessie, you're fit for nothing. I'm going to be doing a lot of tweaking. And she was the one who said, it needs proper editing and proper things. And she brought in the whole book together. And hopefully it should come. I've not, I've been working into the book for 24/7 for past 4 years, but it carries information from past 20 years. And anyway, thank you, Padma, and thank you, everybody, and thank you, INTAC New Delhi. And INTAC New Delhi, my association goes back from 2005 when Mapu was there. He was the first person, and I'm very glad it continues until today. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bessie. Thank you. That's a wonderful talk. There are little questions and comments, but I think a lot of interest for the book. So people want to know, when is it expected? How does one get it in one's hands? So what is the deadline? When will you be?
It's there with the printer.
Okay.
And the next thing is buying the sample. For example, I said I'm incorporating swatches. I was able to buy a Kani shawl from, how expensive they are, and you are able to get around 40 swatches. So the book is going to be completely limited edition. And I got one, if I'm planning for 300 books, I got swatches for 40 books. And in for some books, I don't even, for some traditions, I don't even have the swatches yet. So this lockdown, even if the book is printed, I don't think so in a city, the facility is available for me to travel and get it, or I don't know. It will happen. I don't have a date yet. Okay. I'm just hoping, and yeah.
Yeah, all the best for that. Thank you. The next question is, can we get a comprehensive list of references on Indian weaves. This is Kanika Sachdeva. She's asking if you can provide a comprehensive list of all references on Indian weaves.
Indian weaves, let me put it, it's the plain weave. Under the plain weave, there is so many that comes into it. And then there is a variation where, you know, there is, what do you say? The mat weave is a variation of the plain weave. And so basically, what do you say? Then there comes something with the extra weft, then with the extra what, then there's something called interlocking. So I have, for say, let's say about interlock. Interlock is one thing. In Tamil, we say the Kanjivaram Korvai, or in Telugu, the Kondi technique, or in English, we say the interlock technique. And under that, I have brought in a few variations, like one is the Khadi Kupadam from Andhra. The Dastakar has done beautiful work. So I thought it should be there because it's in Khadi, and so it's the Khadi Kupadam I had incorporated. This is cotton by cotton. And then I have the Gadwal, which is cotton body, silk border. Then I have the Rasipuram, cotton body, silk border. Then the Kanjivaram silk, silk by silk, the contrast one. Then I have the Moirangfi from Northeast, where it is cotton by cotton again. And Kani comes under that. Kullu comes under that. Paitani comes under that. So, you know, like that I have categorized.
Okay.
So this is one weave I've told. So plain weave goes like that, twill goes like that, satin. And so the primary weaves, then is the extra what, then extra weft. I have tried to do something. Let's see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kanika, would you like to add into that? You can unmute yourself if you want. Or is that actually the list of publications? He was asking if there were any books that one could refer to.
No, I mentioned.
My only point was that, you know, it would be helpful to everyone, you know, around, because as what Bessie said, there's so much literature available about Western weaves or Indian weaves written about, you know, from Western perspective, but not much written about Indian weaves from Indian perspective. Or maybe there are a few references which people are not aware about. So if there's any, you know, if there are any references that could be suggested, then it would be a very nicely, it would conclude the existing session. Thank you, Bessie. Thank you, Padma.
Thank you, Kanika.
I have to say hello to Vinay K. Sharma.
Yeah, he was here. Mr. Vinay. Yeah, he was there. Vinay Sharma. Mr. Vinay Sharma, are you there?
Oh, that's okay.
If you could.
Hi.
Hi, yeah, he's there.
Hello, Vinay.
Hello, Bessie. I'm Vinay from Chamba, Himachal Pradesh.
So who can forget? Yeah.
Wonderful lecture you have given. It is very informative. As you know that Himachal is very famous for Kullu shawls, Himachali shawls. So have you added a chapter on shawls also in your book?
I have just, because it's completely focusing on weaves, meaning hand woven. So I have again categorized according, you know, it is like first the woven textile. The next thing will be one will be on embroidered, one will be on the resist technique, and one will be on the printed and the painted tradition. So it's all going to be, it's all grouped that way. And I've just worked on one set only, that is on woven textiles. Yeah, Vinay, and Chamba Rumal, I had an opportunity to work with the Buri Singh Museum. They literally opened the storage after 100 years, and I was able to see the treasure. And that is one monograph which has to be worked upon. And I really look forward to it. And thank you, Vinay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, Vinay.
Thank you, Bessie. Are there any questions? If you could quickly, everyone, if you could type it. There aren't many questions, but people, as I said, are asking about references of Indian weaves and are looking forward to your book. So thank you very much, Bessie. I think it was a very interesting lecture, something very new and informative. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us, taking the time out. We will be having these lectures in the coming 2 weeks, so please do join us. And next lecture is by Julia Brennan. She'll be talking about her perspective on textile conservation. Thank you, everyone. Bye, Bessie. Thank you so much. Thank you, Aishwarya, Merin, Sushant, again for helping with the registration. Thank you to my team. And thank you, everyone. See you then. Bye. Bye, Bessie.